Okay, in contrast to what we saw with business income, when we come to employment deductions and wonder and ask the question, is it deductible? In general, the answer is going to be no. There are very few deductions that you can get from employment. In addition to that fact, for anything, even the things we're about to talk to that are deductible, for those to be deducted from employment income, they have to be required by the employer. Okay, so you cannot say, I incurred this expense because of my employment and I'm going to deduct it. It has to be required by them, which needs to be, I mean, it's really condition 2, but it's really the same condition. It needs to be supported by an official form that the employer provides to you that called a T2200. Okay, so that's just kind of FYI, but the most important thing is that it is required. So I think if we look at a quick example, I think we can convey most of this. So say our employee is required to buy, so they're required to pay, let's say, $5,000 to pay for flights, in flights. Okay, so they have a T2200 that says that traveling is part of their job and they have to pay for it. Okay, that $5,000 is really an expense of the business. Okay, his or her, will make a male, his employer. Okay, so it's very important to note that, you know, this better turn out so that the employer ends up paying for that. If it's required for him to pay it, then surely he should be, at the end of the day, not out of pocket. Okay, so the key here is the employee, sorry about that, M. The employee should not be out of pocket. Okay, meaning they should not make money on the transaction, but neither should they lose money on the transaction. And so that's what the Act tries to accomplish. So they can do that multiple ways. You can reimburse the employee, say, here, hand in your receipts, and in that case, is the employee out of pocket anything? No, they're not. So we meet it because, I mean, you can see how the cash flows out of the company into the employee has already paid the airline, and everybody's good. Second thing, we can give them what the Act calls a reasonable allowance. And basically what this is we'll give you some money up front, and how this works in real life is, or for tax, is we will not tax. The allowance is not taxable. Should be a C in there somewhere. Not taxable. And the expenses is not deductible. Okay, so is the employee whole? Well, it depends, but if the allowance is reasonable, one would assume that it is intended and on average covers the expenses. And so, yeah, we're back to a situation where the employee is whole. Okay, so then the third thing you can do is you can say, we'll give you an unreasonable allowance. And what we're really doing here, and this can be unreasonably high or unreasonably low. And in either situation, we're going to say the allowance is, I'll short form there, is taxable. So now what we've done is we've increased your taxable income, and we will let you deduct the exact amount that you spend. And so, yeah, you may be up or down depending on how bad the allowance is or how high or low the allowance is. But at the end of the day, you're going to pay tax on any extra allowance you get that you don't spend. So you are whole. And then really the last scenario is really, I would say, 3A. So we'll call it 3A. That arrow can come here. It's really not a separate allowance. It's really not a separate scenario. It's what if they give you nothing? But really what that is the most extremely unreasonable allowance. We're going to give you nothing. And so in this case, you know, we don't have to talk about this, but of course we will let you deduct the expenses. So what this is this is saying essentially your salary must have been designed to cover it. Okay, so what this means is, so deductible, just so we understand, this reduces employment income by exactly the amount that you spend. Okay, so what that translates into as if you never got 5,000 of your salary. Okay, so it's as if you never, from the tax person's point of view, it's as if you never received it. And that is, so when you go to settle up and file your tax return, that $5,000, as far as they're concerned, never touched your hands, and so you are whole. Okay, so I hope that helps in getting across, as for completeness, does this keep them whole? Yes. Does this keep them whole? Yes. Okay, so the only other piece that we have to think about here, and we met this previously when we looked at question 413 before, but commission salesperson versus regular, what this comes down to is these people have access to an extra section, which we call subsection 8.1f, but this is one of those good but limited good, so limited to the amount of your commission. So basically, to the extent that you are a business rather than an employee, we will let you essentially deduct as if you were a business. If you're regular, then you just do it under 8.1, 8.1H, H.1, I, and J. Okay, and so what it becomes really helpful, so, and the commission salesperson also has access to 8.1H, H.1, I, and J. So what actually becomes really helpful here is to look at this chart that they give us in our Exhibit 3.4 from the textbook. So let's just mark this up quickly, and hopefully I hope it'll get it across. The key piece here is for the salesperson, they have an option, okay, but only for salespeople. Okay, so, and really the key is here is commissioned salespeople. That or only exists if you are a regular employee. 8.1f is just, it's not open to you. You can't get in the club. Okay, so let's look at the regular people first. The regular people, what can you deduct? Well, H is essentially travel. H.1 is motor vehicles. And really what we want to note here is this is except CCA. So everything related to your car you can deduct there, but you don't deduct your CCA there. As it turns out, you do deduct it under J, so you do get to deduct it just later. And so you basically, for a regular employee, we have H, H.1, I, and J. This other, in our world, really boils down to home office. Okay, which is, there's some particular things that aren't allowed. And then J is important to note, it's not all interest. It's only interest on cars, and it's only CCA on cars. Okay, not on anything else. So make sure that we make this strong link. J is all about cars. Okay, so now for the salesperson basically it's all good. So if you're employed and you get a commission, negotiation of contracts, and you're getting a commission, this is sort of bad, I guess. You'd put it as a negative. It's limited to the amount of your commissions. But the good is that it is not limited to the type of expenditures. So basically, except capital and all the other restrictions that match Section 18. But basically, you're like a business for these particular expenses that you can get in under F. But the fact that it's limited to your amount of commissions becomes problematic. And so the key thing that we have to understand is that the salesperson has to choose. Okay, so must choose 8F, I'll just shorten it, F or H and H.1 together each year. Okay, so not expense by expense, but each year. As soon as you deduct anything under F, you cannot have it under anything. You can't have anything under H and H.1. Similarly, if you put something in H or H.1, you cannot deduct anything under F. So how's this determination made? Well, it's basically made on an after-tax cash deal, and it will depend on, basically the size of the commission when it comes down to it. If your commission is large, then you will probably deduct everything under F. But if it isn't, and you end up running into that cap because there's things that you can't deduct under H and H.1, then you will, or deduct under F, then you will move them and do everything under H as if you're a regular employee. Okay, so the salesperson is never worse off. They can only be better off, but they're not always better off, as we'll see in the question that we look at in class.